Have you ever had a day where you wished you could take your phone and hide from the rest of the world? For a lot of us, these feelings are sometimes mutual. But for some, this need for privacy is permanent and intense. They choose to live and work in places where company is super scarce. Folks in rural communities might joke that they live out in the boonies, but their busy communities pale in comparison to these isolated locations. Want to get away? Check out these most remote buildings and places. Tristan da Cunha. Tristan da Cunha, or also known as Tristan, is the world's most remote inhabited island in the world. The nearest speck of land, St. Helena, is 1,500 miles away, and it's 1,750 miles away from the continent of Africa. The entire population amounts to about 300 people, and to get there requires special permission. It takes 5 to 6 days to get there, and the island is only accessible by boat, as there is no airstrip for planes to land. Only visitors escorted by guides from Tristan da Cunha are permitted to visit, and there are no permanent settlements on the island. Although this island is really isolated, you can call people using the same London, UK rates, and there is an internet cafe on the island, albeit a very slow 256 kilobytes per second connection. Getting on and off the island can only be done on boat schedule, or you can hitch a ride on a fishing boat for about $800. If you're really into remote locations, this is one to consider visiting. Motua, Tibet. Motua, isolated in eastern Tibet, is the only country with no highway link to the outside world among all of China's 2,100 counties. This particular area not only boasts a unique environment experience, but it's also considered a sacred paradise by the people who live and travel there. Enchanted doesn't begin to describe the magic of Motua. Covering an area of 12,000 square miles, the mysterious Motua County is mainly inhabited by the Menba and Luoba ethnic groups with a population of about 10,000 people. There are no roads leading in or out, and not for lack of trying. The terrain is simply too volatile. Any progress gets cut short by one of the many floods or avalanches that plague the area. It's as if nature itself is preserving the sanctity of this secluded haven. All travel to and from has to be done on foot, and it takes a 4-day hike through the dense jungle to reach what's been considered one of the most remote populations on Earth. Itokotormiet. Treacherously cold conditions are a good way to stop people from living somewhere, but the few residents of this small town are willing to brave it. Itokotormiet, formerly known by its much more easily pronounced name of Skorsbyzand, is a remote village in eastern Greenland. With a population of under 500 people, this place is more of a large gathering spot than a proper town. Year-round residents share their backyards with polar bears, Arctic foxes, and the mighty musk oxen. There are only 2 ways in, by plane or by boat, and in the winter, it gets so cold that the ocean freezes around the island. At that point, you can count the boat out, and with unpredictable weather, air travel is iffy at best. It's certainly not as appealing a vacation spot as some of these other remote places, but for some reason the tourism industry is beginning to pick up. Perhaps it won't stay so isolated after all. Kerguelen Islands. The Kerguelen Islands, also known as the Desolation Islands, are among the most isolated places on Earth, hence their name, and are located 2,051 miles away from any sort of civilization. There are no native inhabitants of the island, but as part of the French Southern and Antarctic lands, it is permanently occupied by 50 to 100 French scientists, engineers, and researchers at any given time of the year. Massive active glaciers over the main island, which stretches nearly 100 miles long and reaches 6,445 feet at its highest peak. The islands are so very remote that even if there was an airport, the harsh, freezing climate and icy terrain make it an undesirable location for visitors. The only way to and from the island is by ship. But if you plan to take what would basically be the worst vacation ever as a cabin rental, is $17,000, and a ship only visits the island 4 times a year. Esso Hotel, Cerro Paranal. This remote place has some very extreme weather conditions and fierce winds because of its location. But, like over in the Kerguelen Islands, the reason people stick it out comes down to one simple thing: science. For this establishment situated on Cerro Paranal, a mountain in the Atacama Desert of the Chilean Andes, the word hotel is something of a misnomer as it is closed to the general public. At over 2,000 feet above sea level, the harsh winds, baking sun, unpredictable weather, and the high solar radiation threaten scientists' health. Only the most determined of people with something big to do dare tackle this place, such as to use the very large telescope which belongs to the European Southern Observatory and is the most powerful Earth-based telescope which requires an army of engineers to operate it. Hence the need for the specially designed and built hotel. Despite the extreme weather conditions and winds, there are also frequent earthquakes with a magnitude of up to 8.5 on the Richter scale. Sphinx Observatory, Switzerland. This historic observatory is precariously perched at the top of Europe and is the highest altitude observatory construction in the entire continent. Those who live in this unique region deal with some of the coldest climate conditions at the high elevation. At over 2,000 feet above sea level, the Sphinx Observatory practically touches the sky. That makes it perfect for studying the stars, but ridiculously hard to get in and out of. Add that to the nearly constant presence of shifting snow, and just arriving there is a struggle. The Sphinx has served as a headquarters for researchers in fields such as glaciology, medicine, cosmic ray physics, and of course astronomy. Over the years, the building has adapted to meet the scientists' needs, and the modern-day observatory is fully outfitted with electricity, water, telephone, internet, and even a machine to produce liquid air. In addition to the science stuff going on there, the observatory also provides visitors with a vertigo-inducing panoramic view of the snowy Alps, green valleys, and the Great Aletsch Glacier. From the metal grating terrace that surrounds the building, one can see over 11,000 feet below, with views stretching as far as Germany and Italy. Haley 6 Research Station. The Haley 6 Research Station is one of the most challengingly and technically complex buildings ever built to exist in the harshest climate on Earth. It is the world's first fully relocatable, permanently manned Antarctic research station that redefines polar architectures and engineering. The Haley 6 Research Area is the southernmost Antarctic station operated by the British Antarctic Survey and is located on the 492 feet thick Brunt ice shelf, which flows out to sea at an annual rate of 1,312 feet. Snow levels on the ice shelf rise by around 3.5 feet every year, with temperatures dropping to negative 69 degrees Fahrenheit. The research station was built centered around survivability, maintainability, and livability, allowing the station to function reliably and economically as a home for dozens of scientists who live there for up to 18 months at a time. Tash Rabbit. The Tash Rabbit can be found surprisingly easy for how secluded it is, using just about any vacation booking site. 10,000 feet up against the backdrop of a glorious mountain range in Kyrgyzstan, this 30-room primitive stone structure was built in the middle of an important trade route between China, Europe, and the Middle East. For reasons unknown, it was abandoned before it outgrew its usefulness. In fact, it was never even finished. The story goes that it was built by a father and a son, and each time they took a fishing trip, they'd lay a few stones. One day when the inn was almost done, a group of travelers came. The father warned his son not to go out and meet them, and that there was work to be done. But the son didn't listen. He figured he'd be greeting their first guests. What he discovered was their beautiful daughter. The son ended up leaving with that girl and her family, and the inn was never finished. Bishop Lighthouse. The rocks around the Isles of Scilly caused the wreck of many ships over the years, including the loss of Sir Cloudesley Shovel's squadron of the British fleet in 1707, in which 2,000 men were lost. The elder brethren of Trinity House decided that the lighting of the Scilly Isles, which at the time consisted of only the old St. Agnes Lighthouse, was inadequate, and resolved to build a new lighthouse on the most westerly danger, the Bishop Rock. The rocks rise sheer from a depth of 150 feet and are exposed to the full force of the Atlantic Ocean, and wind pressures at times here exceed 7,000 pounds per square foot. The lighthouse that was built here took 7 years to complete because the conditions were too harsh to work in, and working shifts were brief. The workmen were housed on a small, nearby, uninhabited islet where living quarters and workshops were erected. It was very difficult to erect the lighthouse because of its remote location, and lighthouse keepers had a very difficult time getting to and from the lighthouse. Bishop Rock Lighthouse was converted to automatic operation during 1991, with the last keepers leaving the lighthouse on December 21, 1992, and the fog signal was discontinued on June 13, 2007. Svalbard Global. If you ever had any doubts that the people of our planet could work together to help keep each other alive, then all you'd have to do would be to look at the Svalbard Seed Bank, located inside a snowy mountain on one island of an archipelago that sits between Norway and the North Pole. Svalbard is the world's largest global seed storage shed. It also happens to be the most isolated place on Earth. This building was designed to last. It can withstand temperature shifts, disease, and even natural disasters. With many species of plants, especially crops, disappearing by the day, having a place where people can preserve examples of different plants with their own unique genomes could very well one day be the grace that saves our population from starvation. Of course, if there is a worldwide catastrophe, chances are nobody's going to be able to reach the place to get the seeds out anyway. We hope you liked the video. Let us know which one of these remote locations you would visit. And if you liked the video, then click subscribe and turn on notifications to be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.